Dreams to the medieval mind were not just nighttime nonsense spun by an idle brain. They were messages, warnings, temptations, sometimes jokes from saints with a mean sense of timing. The average villager in Elderlin wouldn't say I had a weird dream last night, so much as a shadow walked across my sleep and left muddy footprints. It was understood that dreams meant something, even if that something made no earthly sense. Especially then, the stranger, the dream, the more likely it had been sent by something important, or something that had been watching when it shouldn't have. And when you first heard that, maybe as a child nestled under a blanket still smelling faintly of lavender and last season's dust, you didn't question it. You just nodded, the way children do, storing the truth like a pebble in your pocket for later. The idea was never frightening. Not really. It simply was, like weather, or bread rising, or the way the crows on the chapel roof always faced east before rain. You began to notice your own dreams differently after that. Not just colors and stories, but textures, weights, the way a word might echo even after waking, or how your fingers would tingle for hours after reaching towards something you couldn't quite name. You remember once dreaming of a woman whose face you could never fully see, only her hands, wrapped in gold-threaded gloves, gently peeling an apple with a knife that glowed blue at the edge. She never spoke, only nodded at you once, as if giving permission. When you woke, the scent of apples clung to your skin, and there was a bruise on your palm, shaped like a crescent moon. You never told anyone, not because you feared disbelief, but because you knew they would believe, and that felt heavier somehow. In Elderlin, the belief has its own gravity. Martia, of course, kept a dream book, not a tidy ledger, but a swollen stack of stitched-together parchment full of ink blotches and pressed herbs and the occasional dead moth. You'd seen it once when she wasn't looking. Pages warped by sleep's humidity, margins crowded with tiny annotations and looping symbols. She jotted down villagers' dreams in her crabbed script, frowning the whole time, like the dream had personally insulted her. Once Bina dreamed she gave birth to a turnip that shouted, "Tax advice." Martia simply nodded and muttered, "Omen of misplaced trust." Another time, Osri dreamed he was climbing a staircase made of bread. She didn't even write that one down, just gave him a biscuit and told him to stay away from the miller for a fortnight. You were too young then to understand what she meant, but the miller's face did look different when you passed him that week. A little flushed, a little too still. The chapel, long since retired from anything resembling official doctrine, had a list of dream symbols nailed to the wall. Wheat meant prosperity. Dogs meant loyalty or betrayal, depending on whether they bit. Teeth falling out meant fear of judgment or possibly just bad apples. No one admitted to updating the list, but it changed often. You remember one week when someone added screaming goats equals hidden envy, and no one questioned it, just nodded, the way people do when something rings truer than they'd like. It was easier in Elderlin to believe that dreams had meaning than to believe your own mind might be doing whatever it liked. Sinra once claimed she could walk into dreams, said it casually one afternoon while weeding her garden, the dirt cool under her nails, the sun warm on her shoulders. You asked if that meant she could control them. "No," she said. "I just visit. Sometimes I'm invited." You asked, what happened if she wasn't? She just smiled and said, "Then I bring honey." You didn't ask more. Some answers sound too much like riddles, and you've learned that in Elderlin, riddles have teeth. She once gave Tam a small charm to wear, while sleeping a smooth stone tied with red string. Said it would keep the louder dreams out. When you asked what she meant by louder, she said, "You'll know if you hear one. You have slept a little lighter ever since." Elderlin lies in that peculiar stillness, where the air seems to hold its own breath. This is when people remember what they saw in the dark. Half in words, half in feelings. Martia says it's the only honest time to speak of dreams. When you haven't yet dressed them up in logic or stuffed them into a drawer labeled nonsense. The early morning confessions at her door say as much dreams about dead relatives giving recipes, dreams about flying pigs, demanding taxes, dreams that taste like salt, and there's always a bowl of water waiting beside her doorstep, not for washing, but for holding the pieces that fall loose, while telling, fragments that shimmer and sink, like gold dust in stillness. Sometimes you catch your reflection in that bowl and wonder who you were just before waking. Sometimes you look away before it finishes forming. That's just as well. Some reflections are still dreaming. Thorn, the blacksmith, once dreamed his anvil, grew legs and walked away, muttering about misuse and disrespect. He told you this in passing, like someone might mention the weather. Hands still blackened from soot, breath fogging slightly in the chill. Said he woke up and found his hammer on the roof. No one asked how it got there. In Elderlin, dreams sometimes reach out into the waking world, not to prove a point, but simply to remind everyone who is really in charge. You could ignore a dream, aye sure, but you did so at your own risk. Better to leave a bowl of milk on the windowsill. Better to say thank you, even if you didn't know who to thank. There was a boy once, Arlen, maybe, who dreamed of a door where no door should be. Just a plain wooden thing in the middle of a field, standing upright, closed. In the dream, he never opened it. He just stood there, night after night, staring. Then one morning, the door appeared in the waking world, exactly where it had always stood in his dream. The hinges creaked like they remembered something painful. Arlen never went near it again. The village didn't touch it either. It's still out there now, weathered and quiet. A reminder that not all dreams vanish at sunrise. Some prefer to linger. Some prefer to see how you behave when no one's watching. Not every dream was ominous. Some were gifts, warm fields, and loved faces long gone. Songs you'd forgotten, notes falling like rain. Ned told you once he dreamed of being a tree, rooted and tall, and when he woke, his back hurt but his heart felt quieter. He said he hadn't had that kind of stillness in years. No one mocked him. Dreams were allowed to be strange in Elderlin, sacred, even, and like all sacred things, they were approached with curiosity and caution, never certainty. You didn't laugh at someone's dream here. You listened. You nodded. You let the silence afterward mean whatever it needed to mean. The tavern had its own relationship with dreams. The Loudwren's back room was rumoured to hold more than just barrels and forgotten coats. Bran insisted he'd once fallen asleep there after a long evening and dreamed the entire tavern stood on a ship, sailing through a sea of ink. When he woke, his boots were damp, and his coat smelled faintly of salt. Lisa just raised an eyebrow when he told her. "Next time," she said, "take a lantern." Whether she meant in the dream or the cellar was unclear. Around here, both would have been sensible advice. Over mugs and meals, people shared their dreams like weather reports. Some bizarre, some benign. Fen once dreamed he built a machine that could record dreams and play them back through bird whistles. Woke up with a half-finished contraption and no memory of starting it. It made a noise like a worried duck and exploded gently after 3 days. He buried it with ceremony and now wears a glove stitched with symbols to keep his dreams from building without permission. Not that it always works. The other night, you saw something crawling out of his workshop window with a key in its mouth. It nodded at you. You nodded back. The church, such as it was, held a different view. The old priest, long gone now, buried with 3 candles and a bell, used to say that dreams were the soul's letters to heaven, usually intercepted. There are messengers, he'd whisper, and there are eavesdroppers. He once held a service for a woman who dreamed her child had wings and refused to come down from the rafters. When she woke, the cradle was full of feathers, nothing else. The priest declared it a visitation. Martia called it indigestion. The feathers smelled like cloves. You kept one, just in case. People came to Elderlin with their dreams, hoping they'd find meaning here. Sometimes they did. More often, they left with stranger questions and a strong cup of nettle tea. You didn't come here for certainty. You came for the feeling that someone was still paying attention. That dreams, however strange or sharp, might be held gently and taken seriously, not solved. Just heard. That was enough. That's always been enough. In the quieter stretches of Elderlin, where the houses give way to hedges and the air feels less obligated to carry news, dreams carry a different weight. People here wake slowly, not just from sleep, but from the places they've traveled in their minds. You can see it in their eyes, still half-latched, still trying to blink out the echoes. Morning here is soft and deliberate, full of kettle whistles and the sound of hands scrubbing away sleep at the edge of wash basins. No one talks much until after second breakfast, not out of grumpiness, just reverence. Because dreams aren't things to rush through. They're to be unpacked carefully, like letters written in a language that rearranges itself if you read too fast. Old Branwyn says, dreams are where the soul goes to air itself out. She says this while pounding dough like it insulted her ancestors. And she means it. Every now and then she'll pull a scone from the oven and declare it prophetic with no further context. Once she handed you one and said, "This one's about you." You ate it with appropriate anxiety. It tasted like cinnamon and deeply repressed emotions. A week later, you found an old journal under your bed that wasn't yours. Inside were sketches of the village, from angles you'd never stood in. You showed it to Branwyn. She sniffed and said, "See, scone never lees." And you nodded, because in Elderlin, even baked goods tell the truth, if you're listening. Martia has a theory that dreams are stitched from threads we leave loose during the day, unfinished thoughts, half-spoken regrets, moments we looked away from too quickly. She says, when you dream, your mind tries to tie them into something wearable. Sometimes you get a robe of insight. Sometimes you get a sock that screams. Either way, you wake up with something you didn't have before. That's the point, she insists, brushing chalk from her sleeves. Eyes narrowed at the horizon, like she's waiting for a thought to return. Martia records her own dreams in a red book that smells like sage and something darker. Something sweet that clings to the edges of your memory without a name. She reads it only on full moons and market days. You asked once if you could look inside. She handed you the index. It read like a table of contents for an unsettling but well-written play. Entry 17, The Glass Lamb and the Endless Keyhole. Entry 34, What the Roots Told the Fire. Entry 51, The Boy Who Owed Sleep a Favor. You handed it back without asking further. The children of Elderlin have their own dream customs, passed among them in whispers and dares. If you wake from a nightmare and can still taste blood, you have to bury a stone under your pillow. If you dream of a tree talking, you must leave it an apple the next day, even if you don't know which tree it was. And if you see another villager in your dream, for you're meant to greet them differently the next morning, one hand over your heart, one behind your back. No one remembers why. They just do it. It's not superstition exactly. It's etiquette. And the trees, curiously, are never hungry for long. There's a woman named Elson who lives on the edge of the village in a house that smells like dried mint and old secrets. She claims she can taste dreams if you bring her the right kind of tea. You once watched her sip a cup of valerian and declare she'd seen a castle made of glass perched on a whale's back. Said the guards wore masks of fog and the queen had no shadow. You asked her what it meant. She frowned, tapped her teacup 3 times, and said, "It means someone nearby is lying to themselves," very convincingly. You haven't been able to drink valerian since. Elson keeps a dream catcher of sorts above her doorway, not one of those decorative webs from a market stall, but a frame strung with knotted threads and tiny bones, feathers from birds that don't nest in this part of the world. She never explains where she got it. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right, it hums. People say if you stand beneath it long enough, it'll show you the dream you were supposed to have, not the one you got, but the one that got misplaced. The idea unsettles you more than you admit. Most folks have enough trouble with the dreams they already remember. Even Ortrich, ever the skeptic, has begun keeping a dream journal. He insists it's just to track his sleep for civic readiness. But the pages are tucked neatly into a leather folio, and you've seen him frown at it like he's trying to decipher a map that keeps changing. He mentioned once a recurring image, a tower of mirrors in a field of ash, always just far enough away to remain unreachable. You asked if he'd tried walking toward it in the dream. He said he did once, and woke with blisters on his heels. You haven't pressed the matter since. Some metaphors fight back. Lately, there's been a quiet ripple of shared dreams in Elderlin, not declared but noticed. The way one notices the temperature dropping, or the way birds fall silent before a storm. People don't speak of it loudly, only in murmurs passed between shared glances and teacups, in pauses that last a breath too long when 2 villagers cross paths at dawn. They're seeing the same things again and again. The silver door, smooth and unmarked, standing alone in a field with no trees, a pool of still water that reflects nothing at all, not even sky, bells ringing through fog, deep and slow, like time breathing in reverse. No one calls it a problem yet. That's not how Elderlin works. But even silence can lean heavy if enough people carry it together. You felt it too, that gentle prickling at the base of your neck, like someone else's memory trying to sit too close. The dreams don't announce themselves. They slip in gently, as if they've always been there, as if you're simply remembering something forgotten rather than dreaming it anew. Net thinks it might be the land dreaming through us. Says perhaps we're vessels, not storytellers, and the earth has chosen this moment to speak in our sleep. Marta snorts and insists we've probably all been dipping into the same barrel of questionable cider behind the tavern. She may not be wrong, but the dreams keep coming all the same. And it's not just what people see, it's the way they feel when they wake. Not afraid. Exactly. Not shaken, just slightly hollowed out, like a bell that's been rung and can't quite forget the sound of it. Some say it's nothing, But you've lived here long enough to know that dreams don't repeat unless something wants to be heard. And when they begin to line up, dream to dream, night to night, you start to wonder who or what is doing the stitching. More troubling still are the dreams that remember you, not the ones you recall briefly before coffee takes them away. Not the ones that dissolve like mist in morning light. These are different. These dreams wait. They linger. They come back. They treat you like a regular guest at a table no one else can see. A hallway you've walked through before, where the paintings change, but the dust never does. A room you only enter in your dreams, where the light comes from nowhere, and the corners don't obey geometry. A door you have never opened, but always know is yours. You wake, with the echo of footsteps still fading down your spine, and you lie there, blinking at the ceiling, unsure of whether the dream ended or paused. You try not to think about what waits behind that door, but the shape of it follows you through the day, like a song you almost remember. Fen, of course, has taken it further. He insists he's been building a city in his sleep, brick by brick, corner by corner. He describes the streets with an intimacy that's unsettling, as if he's lived there longer than he's lived here. The people know him. He says, they wave, they smile. Some of them, I sûr, are dreaming of him in return. He doesn't sound afraid. If anything, he sounds proud, but his hands shake when he thinks no one's looking. And he started forgetting small things' names, recipes, the way home from the market. Nothing alarming. Not yet, but enough to notice. You've seen it before. A dream too large can begin to hollow out the waking world, carving space inside your thoughts where once only sunlight lived. And then spring returns. Birds flutter back into the hedgerows, and everything feels lighter except the dreams. The birdsong stitches itself into the seams of sleep, their calls turning into shapes you don't recognize. You dream of flying, yes, but also of falling, not like fear, but like surrender. The sky peels away from you gently, as if it regrets letting go. You feel weightless and wanted and entirely alone. You wake with your chest aching and the taste of wind in your mouth. Someone says your name in the dream, but differently, as if the name means something new. And when you wake, it still echoes, quiet but certain, lodged somewhere behind your ribs. You press your hand to your chest and say nothing. It's too early. And dreams hate being spoken too soon, because not all dreams are meant for you. Some are borrowed. Some are left behind. Some are letters with no name on the envelope. You remember once, just once, dreaming of a woman you've never seen in waking life. She sat on the edge of a cliff, with her knees drawn up, holding something wrapped in black silk across her lap. She didn't look at you at first, just stared out into the fog, like it had told her something she wasn't ready to repeat. And then, so clearly, she looked up and said, "Tell Brainer the answer is under the roots." Her voice was soft but steady, and the wind didn't dare interrupt her. You didn't even hesitate. The next morning, you told Brainer. Her spoon froze in her bowl, and she went very still. Then she stood, left the room without a word, and didn't speak to you for 3 days. When she did, she handed you a slice of honey cake and said, "Next time, don't listen so closely." She wasn't angry, just tired in that deep, marrow-heavy way that dreams sometimes leave behind. You never spoke of it again, and neither did she. But sometimes, When you pass her garden at dusk, you notice the roots of one tree have been cleared of soil, scrubbed bare, like someone's been looking for something that used to be buried, but may no longer want to be found. And still the dreams come, and still they return. Not every night, but often enough, like a tide, a breath, a memory. You can't quite stop revisiting. You don't try to understand them anymore. You simply nod, leave the window open, and hope quietly that the dream tonight will be one that leaves its footprints gently. Not every dream announces itself with spectacle. Some slip into you like warmth through wool, unnoticed until you realize you've been carrying them all morning. You'll catch yourself humming a tune you've never learned, folding laundry with a rhythm that matches something you saw in sleep, a dance, perhaps, or a way of turning towards someone you loved before you knew their name. And sometimes, it's not even yours. This, too, is understood in Elderlin. Not all dreams belong to the dreamer. You might wake with tears on your face and not know why, or laugh at a joke that doesn't belong to any memory you've lived. No one questions this. It's part of the fabric of things, like wind in the chimney or the creak of wood before a storm. You treat these dreams kindly, the way you'd treat a lost traveler. You feed them, write them down, give them space to leave if they want to. If they stay, you nod and set another place at the table. There's an abandoned well on the edge of the village, old stone ringed, choked with weeds and time. It hasn't held water in decades. But some nights, if you stand near it, you'll hear something rise from the dark below. Not a voice. Not quite. More like memory, trying to become sound. They say a dream fell in once. A big one. Prophetic. Dangerous. Full of fire and names and symbols no one knew how to read. Someone woke in a panic and ran barefoot through the dark to trap it. Tossed a charm into the well's throat and muttered a prayer older than anything that still rings from the chapel bell. Whatever it was hasn't come back up. But the well is warmer than it should be in winter. And sometimes the moss grows in patterns too precise to be natural. You avoid it without meaning to. The body remembers what the mind can't name. Every month or so, when the villagers gather in the chapel, what's left of it for a kind of quiet reckoning. The dream vigil. It's not a sermon. No one preaches. The windows are covered. The candles low. People bring scraps of dream, like offerings, drawings, bits of ribbon, whispered phrases no longer understood. Sometimes a feather, sometimes a single word written in trembling ink. No one judges. No one speaks unless the dream insists. Once, a woman stood and sang a lullaby in a language no one knew. The air turned cold. A draft passed through, though all doors were shut. No one mentioned it afterward. But that night, someone left a second blanket, folded at her door. That's how it is here. Dreams are not explained. They are acknowledged. They are endured. And sometimes, they are carried together, even when no one knows the weight. Children are taught never to lie about dreams, not because it's immoral, but because the dreaming world listens. A false dream can draw real attention. You don't invent visions for entertainment. You don't twist symbols to impress. The dreaming world doesn't like being mocked. There's an old story about a boy who faked a dream about flying to win a girl's affection. That night, he dreamed of falling, not through sky, but through a bone-white tower with no bottom. He never spoke again, but he carves birds now, hundreds of them, tiny, delicate things left on windowsills. None of them ever fall over. The balance is perfect. Some say he remembers more than he lets on. Others say the dream still falls through him. Either way, the girl he once tried to impress never married. She tends the candle outside his cottage. She lights it, even on summer nights, and no one dares blow it out. Because here, in this place where belief is not ornament, but architecture, the line between story and truth is a door you don't open unless it opens first. And if it does, you step through gently, as if the floorboards might be listening, because they probably are. There's a room above the loud wren that nobody sleeps in twice. It isn't locked. It doesn't creak menacingly or groan with haunted purpose. The bed doesn't bleed or vanish, though the mattress does sag like it once bore something that stayed too long. Room 7. That's what it's called. Plain door. A window that opens just wide enough to tempt bad ideas. Floorboards that seem to know the names of people who never gave them. Travelers sleep there sometimes, mostly when all other beds are taken, or when the innkeeper forgets to warn them. They always leave quieter than they arrived. Not frightened, just altered, like they saw a version of themselves they weren't ready to meet. One merchant left behind a drawing of a mountain no one recognized, its peak ringed with stars like a silver crown. Another scribbled a half rhyme onto the wall, underlined the word remember 3 times, then never returned. Lisa paints over the walls once a year. The marks always fade faster than the rest. Ned stayed there once, back during a winter when his own roof gave up and the snow walked into his house like it had business there. He said the room dreamed for him, said he woke with the memory of his mother's voice even though he'd never known her. That night, he heard humming from beneath the floorboards, slow, sweet, and almost familiar. He didn't investigate, just listened, wrapped in too many blankets, feeling like something that had no name had remembered him better than he ever could. The next day, he patched his roof with twice the care and never spoke of room 7 again. But you've seen him glance at its window when he passes, like checking to see if someone's still looking back. There's a theory, spoken only by the lonely and the ones who stir wax into molds at odd hours, that dreams are the currency of the unseen, not payment, exactly, but barter. You give them nightly, unknowingly, generously, and in return, you receive something you didn't know you needed. A bit of spiritual sweeping, emotional dusting, or, if you're unlucky, a reckoning. Sinra says, this is why some people wake up tired. Not all dreams are fair trades. She told you once, pressing a candle into your hand that smelled of cloves and river stones. Some nights, you give more than you get. You asked her how to keep the trade balanced. She just shrugged and said, stay interesting, as if that were a kind of protection. Marta, who thinks all things should be useful, makes dream pillows small, square, sewn with thread so old, it's gone soft. She stuffs them with lavender, mugwort, a few petals from a flower she refuses to name. People place them under their heads on nights when sleep feels sharp-edged and dreams bite. They don't promise peace. Nothing does. But they seem to soften the landings. And sometimes, that's enough. Thorn uses one now. He says it's for his neck, but you've seen him touch it at night, just before extinguishing the lantern. Fingers careful like something fragile might wake up inside. He dreams of fire sometimes. Not nightmares, just fire. He never says what it burns, and no one asks. In Elderlin, you don't ask someone what burns in their dreams. You just pass them a cup of tea that smells like time and understanding. and let the silence between you hold what words would only bruise. There's a wall on the north side of the old chapel that people call the Dream Wall, though it's never been named officially, and no one ever speaks of it in anything louder than a hush. The stone there is pale and soft, the kind that seems to remember touch. People scratch symbols into it faint, fleeting, never meant to last. Feathers, spirals, eyes, moons, phrases like "she was laughing this time," or "I saw the end, and it was quiet." They fade quickly, drunk up by the stone like morning fog disappearing into light. But not before someone else sees. There are no rules, only impulse. One day, a perfect circle might appear, with a coin pressed into its center. 3 days later, the coin will be gone, but the circle remains, as if the stone made a decision. Children think the wall is magic, and perhaps they're right. They bring bits of charcoal, berries, chalk, fingers dipped in soot, and take turns telling it what they dreamed. One girl wrote that she dreamed of riding a horse made of moonlight across a bridge built from music. 2 days later, someone left her a tiny carved horse on her windowsill. No one saw who. No one claimed it. When asked, she simply nodded and said, "I thought it would come." And that's the thing about Elderlin. You don't always get answers. But if the dream is honest enough, someone listens. And sometimes, that's all it takes for the air around you to shift, for the dust in your breath to realign into something like trust. You've dreamed of Elderlin itself, more than once, not just the houses or roads, but the village like it's a body with breath and memory. In the dream, the chimneys are mouths that sing quietly when no one is listening. The windows are eyes that see only what you forget. The trees bend to whisper to rooftops, and the cobbled paths curl like fingers in sleep. It isn't frightening. It feels like being held by something that knows your name before you did. When you wake from those dreams, your hands are always dirty. Just a little, just enough to make you wonder what you touched while you were gone. You never mention it to anyone, not because they wouldn't believe you, but because they would, and that somehow feels more dangerous. In Elderling, dreams don't evaporate. They settle. They root. You find their remnants in unexpected places. A glove left hanging from a tree branch no one claims. A kettle still warm, with no fire to heat it. A song hummed by 3 different people on the same day, none of whom remember where they heard it. These are not accidents, or if they are the kind of accidents Elderlin makes space for. Accidents that breathe, accidents with teeth. Most places forget dreams. Elderlin collects them like rain in a barrel. Careful, quiet, sacred. You begin to understand, somewhere between sleep and soup, that this place is not haunted by dreams. It is fed by them, and as long as someone still dreams honestly, as long as someone still blinks twice before speaking, the village will remember how to listen, with shutters drawn, with teacups warm, with a seat by the fire kept open for whoever might return next. Elson once told you the trick to understanding dreams isn't to analyze them, but to treat them like guests. You ask why they've come, she said. Then you feed them something sweet, something bitter, and something warm. If they're still sitting there after that, you ask what they want. You asked what happens if they don't leave. She looked at you, very gently, and said, "Then they're not dreams anymore." She didn't say what they became. Some doors don't need opening. Some are already halfway through. Each year at the turning of autumn, when the shadows grow longer and the air smells faintly of cider and wet stone, a few villagers gather near the old watchtower. They bring with them folded scraps of paper, nothing ornate, no flourishes, just plain ink on pale parchment, dreams they want to forget. Or maybe dreams they're afraid will remember them too clearly. They feed them to a controlled flame, slow and solemn. No speeches, no songs. The smoke curls upward, sharp with rosemary and old regret, like a lullaby unraveling backwards. No one speaks during the burning. That's the rule. You don't interrupt the leaving. Afterward, everyone goes home a little lighter, though some carry a second slip of paper in their coat pocket, just in case forgetting doesn't work. There's no shame in that. Not all dreams are meant to be released at once. Some must be carried until they soften, until they learn how to let go of you as gently as you tried to let go of them. But some dreams don't wait for night. They arrive in the gaps between thoughts, between footsteps, between the second breath and the third. You'll be tying your boots and suddenly remember what it felt like to float. You'll pass a puddle and see your own face, younger or older, or simply wrong. You'll hum a melody you've never learned and feel a pang of mourning for something you're not sure ever existed. These moments are not madness. They're not mistakes. In Elderlin, they're called waking echoes, not hallucinations, not tricks, just dreams doing their due diligence, checking in during business hours, and they're treated with the same respect. You pose, you nod, you let them pass through, you like wind through a chime, hoping that whatever they meant to carry will arrive where it needs to, because in this place, dreams are not background noise, they are weather, and sometimes they storm quietly. That is why each night, as the shutters are latched and the last lanterns flicker into calm, the village draws its breath and turns inward, and the dreams, ever patient, slip in through the gaps, through roof beams and window cracks, through the silence behind prayers and the scent of warm linen. Not all are kind, not all are clear, but all are invited. And Elderlin, old and listening, holds them in its breath, its soil, its sleep. You wake, altered, subtly reshaped by what passed through, and if you wake gently, you might still feel it that shimmer just beneath the surface of morning, like your bones remember something your voice hasn't found yet. The villagers say dreams are most potent on nights when the moon is missing, when the sky forgets its silver coin and the dark settles a little deeper into the folds of the land. On those nights, sleep doesn't arrive like a hush. It arrives like a stranger at your door, holding a parcel you didn't ask for, wrapped in twine, humming faintly, and you open it. Of course you do. That's the rule. Inside. It might be a memory wearing someone else's face, or a field made entirely of feathers, or a voice that speaks backward but means well. Marta advises caution on moonless nights. She says it's when the dreaming world feels unsupervised, when the usual boundaries go soft around the edges. Last dark moon. Brina dreamed she was a tree, not metaphorically, an actual tree roots tangled in cool soil, branches reaching toward a sun she couldn't quite feel. Birds nested in her, and insects carved strange messages into her bark. She said it was peaceful, mostly, until the storm came, and she couldn't bend, just had to wait it out. Every drop a hammer. When she woke, her limbs ached, and her mouth tasted like moss. She didn't speak for 2 days. Then, without explanation, she went into her garden and pruned every tree, humming something slow under her breath. When asked why, she simply said, "They were too proud." No one argued. Shared dreaming becomes more common this time of year, late autumn, when the wind learns how to whisper properly and the leaves lose their grip on certainty. Families wake, humming the same tune. Lovers murmur entire conversations in their sleep and forget them by breakfast. Even the animals are touched. Crimp, the village dog of questionable origin and undeniable presence, barked at a mirror for a solid hour one morning, growling low and rhythmic, as if trying to warn his reflection. Elsith swears her hens laid eggs in patterns. One had a spiral, another something that looked unsettlingly like a face. No one dared make an omelette. They were buried, gently and with ceremony, near the old scarecrow. That felt like the appropriate level of response. And sometimes, around this season, the dream reader comes. No one knows their name or where they stay. They don't knock. They're just suddenly there, seated in the village square, wrapped in grey cloth and quiet, smelling faintly of juniper and cold stone. They place a bowl of water between themselves and the world. They never speak first. If you have a dream worth telling, you sit and speak. If you don't, you keep walking. The water never ripples, no matter the wind, and when the telling is done, the reader places a single pebble in the bowl, sometimes smooth, sometimes jagged. That's all. By morning, the pebbles are gone. Sinra once said she spoke to the dream reader, not in words, but in sleep. She claims they don't belong anywhere. They visit the places where dreaming has become too loud, like rivers swollen past their banks. They don't fix dreams, she whispered. They remind them where they were supposed to go. You didn't ask what that meant. Some truths are better left floating just beneath the surface. You simply nodded and let the silence settle over you like snowfall. Sometimes, you wake not with a memory of a dream, but with the weight of it like the aftertaste of smoke or the echo of a bell struck too far away to hear but close enough to feel. You lie there, still in the breathless cradle of dawn, and it clings to your skin, a soft tension humming just beneath the surface. You don't remember what you saw, not the faces, not the places, only the feeling that something was asked of you, something quiet and patient, still waiting somewhere in the folds of your mind. These are the mornings when you move more slowly, like wading through water you can't see. You stir the tea 3 times without meaning to, and the spoon feels heavier than usual. The house creaks differently. The fire struggles to catch. Even the air seems to hesitate before touching your cheeks. You don't speak. Not yet. Words feel too sharp for something so fragile. Instead, you move as if you're trying not to wake something that isn't entirely gone. Sinra calls it dream bruising when the shape of a dream remains pressed into the soul like a body leaving warmth in a bed. It fades eventually, but not all at once. And until it does, the world feels thinner, like breath held too long, like a song waiting for its last note. These days arrive more often now, not daily, but with a kind of rhythm, like tides that no longer obey the moon. The village feels it too. People walk slower in the mornings, greet each other with softer eyes. No one pushes the silences. Children draw symbols in the frost on windows before it melts, fingers tracing spirals, circles, sometimes shapes that resemble eyes or keys. No one stops them. No one corrects them. The frost is allowed to carry what it must. You begin to notice that time behaves differently in these moments. Hours stretch like thread. Days fold inward, like pages turned too carefully. You'll glance at the sky and swear it's a different season than when you looked last. And maybe it is. Or maybe you're still half asleep. The baker swears she heard a lullaby echoing from her oven one night, low and clear. Notes carried through steam and flour. When she pulled the bread from the fire, it was warm in a way that felt deeper than heat, like comfort baked into crust. She didn't sell that loaf. She left it on the chapel steps, wrapped in linen, with a single word stitched into the cloth stay. No one claimed it. No one ate it. But the next day, the steps smelled like rosemary and sleep, and no birds landed there for a week. These small shifts, these quiet impossibilities are part of life now. Not feared, not named, just held. The way you might hold a snowflake in your palm without breathing, knowing it's not meant to last. And yet you want to remember how it felt before it vanished. Elderlin has learned not to reach too quickly for answers. The village prefers stillness to certainty. And in that stillness, something deeper stirs, like a dream too shy to speak, but too old to forget. And so, the village leans inward, gently, night after night, like a book slowly closing on a story that is still being written somewhere in the marrow of the dark. You start to notice the way the shadows in your room curve differently before sleep, how they soften rather than stretch, how they seem to hum with something, wordless and attentive. You light the same candle each evening, not out of habit, but out of recognition, as if flame itself were a signal passed between you and whatever waits on the other side of the veil. Some nights, you sit with your dreams before you sleep, not recalling them, not naming them, just sitting, with the quiet knowledge that they are nearby. Listening, you don't summon them, you don't coax them, you simply let them know you're here. And that is enough. There's a feeling that's taken root lately, not quite fear and not quite longing, but something gentler, heavier, a kind of reverence, perhaps, or the realization that you are not dreaming alone, that whatever thread has begun to weave its way through the sleep of Elderlin is still weaving, quietly, persistently, like a song spun on a loom that doesn't forget any note. Even the animals are softer now. The goats blink slowly. The crows no longer caw. But watch. The river hums lower than it used to, as if its current is remembering something it once carried, but never delivered. You see the signs in small things, a cracked mirror reflecting a smile that didn't happen, a trail of stones in your garden, forming the outline of a word you do not know, a dream journal you never wrote in slowly, filling itself with neat, slanting script that resembles your own, but isn't. You're not afraid, or rather you are, but in a way that feels honest, like standing before a forest that breathes back when you breathe in. You begin to understand that the dreams were never separate from the world, that they've always been part of it, stitched into the soil and smoke and silence, waiting for someone to see them, not as riddles to be solved, but as companions to be walked beside. Elderlin knows this, has always known. The village is not merely a place, but a threshold, and sleep is not a pause, but a passage. You go to bed now, as if stepping across, not down pulling the covers, not just over your body, but over your waking self, tucking it in with care, with apology, because the dream waits, and it remembers, not everything, not all at once, but enough. And as your eyes begin to close, as the lantern gutters low, and the breath in your chest grows long and slow, you feel it again, that shimmer at the edge of thought, that soft gravity pulling you inward, downward, through, and you go, not because you must, but because you are expected, because the dream has set the table, and it is your place to arrive. The dream begins before you are fully asleep, sliding in through the narrow gaps of thought that open only when your body forgets how to hold tension. It arrives like a fog that has waited patiently at your doorstep, not knocking, not pressing, just knowing you would eventually open. And you do, not with intent, not even with welcome, just with softness. The kind of surrender that comes not from weakness, but from being worn smooth by time. You are lying in your bed, or something that wishes to be your bed. The weight of blankets is right, the shape of the pillow familiar, but the air smells faintly of salt and something metallic, something forgotten. You turn your head and the room moves with you, not shifting violently, but unfolding, quietly, like pages turned by wind. The ceiling is gone, replaced by sky, impossibly high, and pulsing with a blue too deep to exist in the waking world. You don't question it. You never do. Not here. Instead, you stand, barefoot, and the floor beneath you is warm, slightly damp, like the stones beside a river that hasn't flowed in a long time, but remembers how. The silence isn't empty. It's waiting, and the dream doesn't begin so much as continue, as if it had always been here, and you had simply fallen back into it like a story, paused mid-sentence. You begin to walk, though no path presents itself. The world arranges itself around your pace, trees rising like breath, grass parting without sound. It isn't a forest. Exactly. Nor a meadow, nor any place you could name with certainty. The air feels thicker here, not heavy, but intentional, as though every molecule remembers being shaped by a wish. You breathe, and something breathes with you. Just behind your heartbeat, the rhythm settles, slow and tidal, and your body begins to loosen in ways it never does in waking. There is no destination, and that comforts you more than it confuses. Here, you are allowed to simply move, not toward, not away, just with. The landscape hums, not in melody, but in tone, as though the ground itself is singing a note that can only be heard through the soles of your feet. There are no colors in the traditional sense, just light that moves like thought, and shadows that carry weight like memory. You pass beneath an archway, made of nothing, its shape suggested only by the sudden stillness of the air beneath it. As you step through, your name echoes, not spoken. Woodfeld, like a thread tugged gently from within your chest. You pose, hand over heart, not from fear, but recognition. Someone or something remembers you, not your face, not your waking name, but something older, something Kita, the part of you that dreams before sleep, that speaks before language. You come upon a place that might be a bridge, but it spans no water. Only mist stretches beneath, thick and swirling, its movement strangely slow, as if watched. The bridge is made of wood that gleams faintly in the dreamlight, each plank inscribed with symbols you don't recognize but instinctively trust. As your hand trails across the railing, one of the symbols opens beneath your fingers, not with a glow, but with a sensation, like a secret remembered. You don't look back. You don't need to. The dream would not allow you to be lost, only transformed. You step onto the bridge, and the mist below parts slightly, not like wind through fog, but like a thought deciding to let itself be seen. The movement is deliberate, a kind of bow, midway across. You stop, not because you're unsure, but because the stillness here asks for presence. You breathe. The mist breathes with you. In that moment, time curls inward, becomes something circular and soft, something that doesn't hold you, but floats beside you. You close your eyes and feel it, the pressure of a hand, not on your shoulder, but near it, like the memory of comfort. You open your eyes and the world has shifted not by distance, but by depth. The dream is speaking now, not in words, but in textures, in colors behind your eyes, in memories that never happened, but feel as if they did. The warmth of a sun that never rose, the smell of a book you've never read. Boot, miss deeply, a doorway half open in a room that never was yours, but would have been, had things gone differently. These feelings flood gently, like tide over sand, like silk over skin. You don't grasp them, you receive, and you understand. Not with logic, but with breath. This dream was waiting for you. Not today, not yesterday, but always, like a room held open just in case. And now that you are here, it does not rush. It only continues, and you walk on, slower now, wrapped not in answers, but in something better: recognition, quiet and wordless, and the simple, sacred truth that you are not alone in the places where your soul goes to rest. There is a kind of gravity in this dream now, not one that pulls you down, but one that gathers you, like arms around your shoulders, like a memory folding itself over you to keep out the wind. You cross the last plank of the bridge and find yourself not in a destination, but in a stillness that feels shaped precisely to your form. The ground here is soft, moss-like, though no moss grows, and the air smells faintly of paper, of steam, of hands long vanished, but once kind. The sky above you is no longer sky. It is a ceiling of slow-turning constellations. Stars not as points of light, but as the briefest touch of warmth on your brow. Your shoulders, your spine, you sit without choosing to. The dream allows it, even encourages it. And the moment you lower yourself to the earth, something inside you quiets, something that in waking is always buzzing, always looking, always aching just a little. You rest your hands in your lap, you tilt your head, you listen, and the dream speaks. Not aloud, not directly. It speaks in flickers of recognition, in the way your breath slows, in the feeling of having been here before, even if you haven't. It brings you images not fast, not sharp, but slow and round, like stones worn smooth by centuries of water. A hallway you almost lived in, a voice you might have become, a question that was once asked of you in a different life and never answered. It does not ask for explanations. It only offers them gently, the way the sea offers shells, without demand, without certainty, only presence. And in that presence, you feel something long held finally begin to exhale. A tension beneath your ribs, a grief you never fully named. It doesn't break, it simply lets go. The dream allows you to sit in this unraveling for as long as you need. Time becomes a breath held in the chest of the world, and you are simply part of it, neither guest nor host, only witness. The stars continue their slow turning. Somewhere nearby, a soft ringing begins, not like bells, but like glass, being tapped gently by a fingertip. It comes from nowhere, and everywhere. It doesn't ask for your attention. It simply becomes part of the space. Like warmth, you close your eyes, not because you are tired, but because you are full, and in that darkness behind your lids, something blooms a light that doesn't shine, but listens. And there, at last, the dream shows you something meant only for you. You do not tell it. You do not write it down. You will not remember the shape of it when you wake, but the echo will remain in your chest. In the way you speak someone's name with more patience. In the way you pause before turning a page. It is not clarity the dream gives you. It is reverence, the gift of having been seen, not as you are, but as the thread beneath it all, the part of you that remembers fire and frost and every breath between. And when it is time to leave, the dream does not say goodbye. It simply begins to dissolve. The way fog pulls back from a field when the sun grows curious. You do not walk away. You simply shift. The stars dim. The ground cools. The air becomes thinner, lighter. You rise not with effort, but with grace. As if your bones have remembered how to carry you kindly. You breathe in once, deeply. You breathe out something you never had a name for. And then, softly, with no fanfare, you begin to wake. You wake as though surfacing through velvet, not pulled by sound or light, but by something more patient, an invitation. Perhaps not a command. The air is still dim, the room touched only by the soft grey before dawn. When the world hasn't quite remembered what shape it wants to be, you lie there, eyes half open, body still cradled by warmth, and feel it the echo of the dream, not as a memory, but as a mood, a residue, a gentle pressure just beneath your ribs. You can't name what you dreamed, not exactly. You recall the feeling of moss beneath your feet, the slow pulse of stars above, the sound of something like a bell, far away and kind. You remember sitting. You remember silence that held you like a lullaby sung by a voice without words. But the images have already begun to curl at the edges, dissolving like breath on glass. It doesn't matter. Not here. Not in Elderlin. What remains is enough. You move slowly, not out of reluctance, but reverence. Every gesture, a breath, a stretch. The folding back of a blanket feels like an offering. Like a rite. You notice the way your fingers tremble faintly, not from fear, but from softness. Your skin feels more porous than usual, as though the dream still lingers just outside it, watching, or perhaps waiting for you to say thank you. You do, not aloud, but inwardly, the way one might nod to the last note of a song. You stand, and the floor is cool, but not cold. The room feels both familiar and slightly shifted, like it held its breath while you slept and hasn't fully exhaled yet. You touch the windowsill, and your fingers come away faintly damp, as though the night left something behind. Outside, the village is still quiet. Smoke hasn't yet curled from chimneys. Doors remain closed, but the birds, always the first to remember, have begun their slow music. You listen. You always do. Now, since the dreams grew louder, since waking became less of a break and more of a return, you've learned to notice what moves at the edges. A kettle left warm before you reach the hearth. A candle that burns a little slower than it should. A book opened to the page you had not yet read. These things happen gently, without drama. They are not miracles. They are acknowledgements. Whispers from the places your body cannot go, but your dreaming self walks nightly. You wrap a shawl over your shoulders, and it smells faintly of rosemary, of soot, of something older than both. You breathe it in. You let it settle, and for a moment, standing there in the still, soft morning, you feel both heavier and lighter than you've ever been, like you're being carried, and yet deeply rooted. All at once, the world feels more awake than you are, and yet not unkind. There is space here. There is silence. There is the promise of bread and warmth and someone speaking your name the way the wind does when it moves through tall grass. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, just to listen, because the dream may be over, but the listening is not. Not yet. Not ever. You move through the morning like someone remembering a song they never learned slow. Reverent. Not out of weariness, but from a desire not to startle anything, still clinging to the folds of sleep. The water in the basin is cool, clear, touched faintly with steam from the rising hearth. You dip your hands into it and pause, not to wash, but to feel. The surface trembles beneath your palms like something breathing, and for a moment, you wonder if the water knows what you've seen. You touch your face and it feels different, familiar. Yes, but slightly shifted, like a map drawn in new ink over the same land. The mirror offers no answers, just your eyes, calm and wide, as if they've seen further than your feet have walked. Outside, Elderlin is beginning to stretch, though it does so softly. Footsteps shuffle on stone. A door opens with the quiet humility of habit. Somewhere, a wooden spoon meets a pot with rhythm. These small sounds are sacred now, not noise, but continuation. And as you sit with your tea mild, floral, sweet with just a trace of bitter, you feel how the dream still leans close. Not pressing, not lingering, just staying near, as if to remind you that whatever you touched in sleep isn't finished with you yet. It never is. You carry it in how your fingers rest on the rim of the cup, in how your breath slows just before each sip, in the way you glance at the window, not for weather, but for signs, the subtle shift in the wind, the pattern of frost on the glass, the silence between bird calls. Elderlin teaches you to pay attention, not in the way the outside world does, with urgency and consequence, but with curiosity, with care. A question is not asked for an answer here. A question is asked to honor the asking. You think of the bridge again, the one in the dream, the one with mist instead of water. You think of the hum beneath your feet, the door-shaped silence that waited beyond it. And you wonder, was it meant for you, or are you simply the one who noticed? You don't need to know. The dream isn't a riddle to solve. It's a companion to walk beside. So you rise, you dress, you step out into the gentle light of day, which greets you not with brilliance, but with tenderness. And as your feet find the familiar stones of Elderlin's path, you feel the world receive you softly, like the closing of a book that knows the story isn't finished, only resting for now. By mid-morning, Elderlin breathes with the steadiness of something ancient and alive, its pulse slow and wide, like tree roots beneath soil that has never forgotten the weight of footsteps. The shutters along the stone cottages open, one by one, not quickly, not with urgency, but like eyes adjusting to light after a long and willing sleep. You move through the village not with purpose, but with presence. Your pace matched to the hush that wraps the rooftops, the cobblestones, the moss-stitched walls. There is no schedule here, only rhythm. Time doesn't pass in Elderlin. It settles, soft as flower dust in a sunbeam, and you learn, slowly, to move with it, not through it. Your boots leave prints in the damp ground, but even the earth seems reluctant to keep them. Behind you, your steps blur at the edges, swallowed by dew and patience. You pause often now, without needing a reason, beside a leaning fence post wound, with wild thyme. Near the bakery, chimney exhaling its first sweet breath of morning bread. The world around you is quiet, but not still. There is motion everywhere, just small enough to escape attention, the twitch of a curtain, the shifting of a shadow that shouldn't shift, the tiniest creak of wood that knows your name. You listen. You don't speak. Not yet. A soft breeze moves past you, like a question. You let it go unanswered. That's something you've learned here. Not every question needs to be caught. Some are better left drifting, to be found again, in dream, down the lane. Marta is in her garden. Though calling it a garden feels untrue, it is more of a sanctuary. A quilt of green and gold stitched from herbs, low blossoms, and vegetables grown slow and wide and generous. She moves through it like someone speaking to ghosts, her hands buried wrist deep in soil, her mouth moving without voice. You do not interrupt. Instead, you nod just once, and she nods back, eyes never lifting. That, too, is enough. Here, acknowledgement does not require dialogue. Here, recognition is quiet and mutual and sacred. The very act of being seen, and of seeing, is a kind of communion. The silence is never awkward in Elderlin. It is a second language. Everyone speaks fluently. Your steps bring you past the old chapel, its bones softened by ivy and years. The dream wall waits in the shadow of its eastern side, cool and shaded, even as the sun brightens. You have no offering in your pocket today, no charcoal, no berry-stained cloth, no folded paper filled with symbols half remembered from sleep. But you come anyway, not to give, just to witness. The wall is never the same twice. Today, it bears a spiral drawn in soft blue chalk, the kind that smears at the edges where fingers have brushed it. Whether in reverence or accident, you cannot know. Beneath it is a phrase, the kind that sits in the air, even after your eyes have moved on. I was not alone there. The letters are not rushed. They curve gently, shaped with care, with something like longing. You do not know who wrote it. You don't need to. The truth of it belongs to anyone who's ever woken with a name on their lips that wasn't theirs, with a memory stitched from someone else's sorrow or joy. You feel the words settle somewhere beneath your collarbone. You stay a little longer than you need to. You always do. There's a bench near the wall, worn, lichen-crowned, cradled in roots from a birch that leans like it's listening. You sit, and the stone welcomes you with its quiet weight. The sun filters through the chapel's broken frame, casting lace light across your boots. You rest your palms on your knees. You breathe, not to calm yourself, but to be present for whatever this moment might bring. From this place, the village looks like a dream itself. The curled chimney smoke, the slow blur of linen on lines, the soft gold of thatch glowing where it catches the morning light. A crow lands on the chapel's steeple and caws once, sharp and solitary, like a punctuation mark to something unspoken. Then stillness returns, thick and soft. You close your eyes not out of weariness, but to listen more clearly. Sometimes, when the dream lingers long enough, you can feel its shape even in waking. Not a memory, but a texture, the way your breath shifts, the weight of your hands, the tilt of your spine. Today, the dream still sits beside you, not intruding, just being. You can feel its gaze, not as eyes, but as warmth along your shoulder, like a shawl draped by someone long gone who still remembers the shape of your back. You don't turn, you don't speak. There's nothing to say that hasn't already been shared in silence. Instead, you lean slightly into the warmth, and the dream, gentle as ash on wind, leans back. Eventually, you rise not because the moment has ended, but because it has deepened into something too quiet to stay visible. The warmth along your shoulder fades slowly, like steam retreating from stone. You carry it with you, though, the way one carries the scent of lavender after walking through a garden, not strong, not overwhelming, just enough to return in certain breezes, certain silences. As your feet find the path again, each step feels like part of a conversation, continued beneath the breath. Elderlin is more awake now, but it still moves like something careful, something stitched from the long patience of moss and the hush of candlelight. You walk past fences twined with last year's vines, past windowsill, herbs growing wild in old teacups. The baker's cat, old and soft and full of secrets, blinks at you from atop a barrel, as if to say, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You nod, as you always do. The cat does not return the gesture. It never does. The gesture is not for it. It is for the dream that may still be watching through its eyes. You turn the corner near the stone, well, the one long dry but never empty. They say it holds echoes now, not water, whispers caught in its throat. You never throw anything into it. You just rest your hand on the crumbling edge as you pass. And the stone is always just a little warmer than it should be. Not hot, just warm enough to feel like memory, just warm enough to believe, for one fleeting breath, that something below is listening. You do not wait for a sign. That's not how it works here. Elderlin doesn't grant symbols like favors. It simply gives you space to notice. And noticing, you've come to understand, is the most sacred act of all. You pause again at the base of the hill, where the village road forks gently toward the fields and the forest's edge. There is no wind today, only stillness. But the trees sway anyway, not with movement, but with knowing. You feel their gaze deep and bark quiet, and you meet it without fear. These trees have dreamed longer than you've lived. They have held the stories of villagers who no longer have names, have hummed lullabies into the bones of the hills, have whispered their own root songs into the streams that still sing in spring. They do not judge your presence. They only mark it. You let your fingers brush a low branch, its bark dry and smooth, like parchment, half written. Something shifts in the air, and for a moment, the dream stirs again, not strong, not sharp, but like a familiar figure passing just behind you, close enough to feel, too far to touch. You let it pass. You bow your head slightly, in thanks, or in farewell, or maybe in both, and then you turn back toward the village, toward hearth smoke and teacups, toward the quiet sanctuary of another slow day. You are not finished with the dream. But more importantly, the dream is not yet finished with you, and you feel that now, deeply and clearly, in the way your hands no longer tremble, in the way your name feels steady in your mouth, in the way the earth no longer feels like a surface, but a companion. Something has opened. Something has settled. You do not name it. You do not need to. Some truths are better lived than spoken. So you walk on, slowly, gently, with the dream behind your ribs like a second heartbeat, and the morning stretching ahead like a field unbroken by footsteps, waiting only for you to arrive. The afternoon drifts in without announcement, settling like a shawl across Elderlin's shoulders. The light grows golden, not brighter, but deeper, like the sun is leaning closer to listen. The village moves gently beneath it, each motion an act of quiet reverence. Doors half open, children tracing invisible patterns in dust. A hen's roosting a little earlier than usual. You sit beneath the crooked tree near the smithy, the one that leans just enough to suggest it knows something you don't. The stone bench beneath you is warm from hours of sun, and when you close your eyes, you can feel it pulsing faintly beneath you, as if it remembers every other dreamer who has rested there. You stay still, not because you are tired, but because stillness feels more like participation than absence. Around you, the world breathes in long, slow tides. In, out, not wind, not weather, just the breath of being. You match it unconsciously, your chest rising and falling with the rhythm of stone and leaf and silence. A cart rattles in the distance. Wheels speak against worn gravel. The sound arrives like an old memory, familiar before your mind can name it. You let it pass through you, like light filtered through lace, like birdsong you never learned to translate. Today feels slower than most, or maybe you've simply grown quieter inside. You notice more the way the shadows stretch but never rush, the way the scent of baked grain seems to hover longer in the corners of the square, the way people greet each other, not with urgency but with time. Each gesture is unhurried, like everyone is carrying something fragile in their chest and walking carefully to avoid spilling it. You feel it in yourself too, that quiet holding, a kind of fullness you're not ready to pour into words. You think, not for the first time, of how dreams bleed into the waking hours here, not with spectacle, but with texture, with the way your hands remember moss, even when they hold only cup or cloth, with the way you pause before entering your own home, as though waiting to be invited. There's a gravity to the space between things in Elderlin, a weight in silence that is not emptiness but invitation. You find yourself wanting less and noticing more. You begin to understand that the dream, even now, is not over, that it doesn't end when your eyes open or the tea cools. It lingers in the bones of the village, in the shadows beneath eaves, in the quiet between breaths. It is here, always, waiting to be witnessed, not chased. You place your hands on your knees, palms open. The sky above is soft, a quiet ache of blue smudged with silver cloud. For a moment, it feels like something is watching through it, not with intent, but with fondness. You do not speak to it. You simply let yourself be seen. And in that act, wordless, weightless, you feel the tether again, not to a place, not even to yourself, but to the thread that dreams pull taut across all things, a thread made not of answers, but of presence, of breath, of being. You sit longer than you meant to. The bench grows cooler. The tree casts a wider shadow, but you do not rise. Not yet. There is something sacred in stillness, and you are not ready to leave what the silence is still trying to give you. When you finally stand, the world adjusts without protest. The light slips slightly, golden, stretching toward amber, and the shadows follow, as if reluctant to let you go. Your knees ache just enough to remind you that time has passed, though the sky still holds that open, listening hush that makes it hard to believe in clocks. You walk slowly, almost reluctantly, as if each step away from the bench is a promise you'll return. The village greets you again, not loudly, never loudly, but in the small ways that matter. A dog thumps its tail once in greeting, without lifting its head. A window creaks open just wide enough to let out the smell of cinnamon and rosemary. Somewhere behind you, someone hums a lullaby you haven't heard since childhood, and though you know the notes by heart, you resist the urge to sing along. Some songs are meant to be listened to only once. Some songs belong to the moment that holds them. As you pass the baker's stoop, you notice someone has left a stone there, smooth, tupal, veined with gold, like it once belonged to the river, but was kept back for reasons the river accepted. Next to it, a folded scrap of linen, pressed under a jar of lavender buds. You do not touch it. You only look. The gesture is not for you, but it was meant to be seen. And in Elderlin, witnessing is as sacred as offering. You make your way to the edge of the orchard, where the trees grow thick with memory. The apples are late this year, or early, depending on who you ask, but the scent of them green, sharp, just turning sweet clings to the air like a thought, unfinished. You pause beneath a twisted branch, one that bows low enough to trace the top of your head if you forget to duck. The grass here is soft, cool, whispering with crickets too lazy to rush. You sit again, because the day seems to ask it of you, and because your bones agree. The quiet settles back over you like a blanket, familiar and full of weight that doesn't burden, only reminds. You feel the dream again, not as a return, but as a pulse steady, subtle, nestled behind the moments. The way the breeze lifts the edge of your sleeve, the way your fingers brush the grass, and it feels like silk instead of blades. The way your own name feels heavier now when you think it, like it's carrying more history than it used to. Not history from this life alone, something older, something layered. And in that softness, you begin to understand that dreams do not leave us. They are not events, not messages to be received and discarded. They are companions. They walk beside us when we stop noticing. They wait in the shade of trees and the pause before we speak. They listen through our hands as we pour tea, as we lace our boots, as we write letters we never send. You lie back in the grass. The sky blinks slowly above you. You feel the warmth of the earth beneath your spine, and it cradles you, not like a bed, but like a memory returning. And you think maybe the dream is not something you enter. Maybe it is what you return to, over and over, like a home without walls, like a song without end. You close your eyes. You breathe. The day breathes with you, and for a while, nothing moves. And that stillness, that blessed, aching stillness, is enough. Evening approaches the way dreams do, quietly, deliberately, without asking permission. It doesn't fall, it folds. A slow, silken descent of lavender light over rooftops and hills, turning the edges of the world to gold and hush. You rise from the orchard grass with a softness that feels practiced, as if your body has remembered the choreography of gentle parting. Your back carries the warmth of the earth like an echo. You do not brush it away. Instead, you carry it with you, like a final word from a conversation, still unfolding in silence. As you walk, the village lights itself, not with brightness, but with kindness, windows glowing, like hearth-held secrets, lanterns swinging gently with the breath of the evening. The sounds shift. 2. The clang of tools gives way to the murmur of bowls being set on wooden tables. Footsteps grow slower, less purposeful, voices lower, rounder at the edges, like they're preparing to speak to sleep. You hear a song being played softly on someone's old stringed thing notes, loose and trailing, like smoke from a dying candle. There are no lyrics, just feeling. That's enough. You stop by the elder's gate, where a vine always flowers out of season. No one knows what it's called. No one asks. It blooms when it wants, and the blossoms are always the same, pale, violet, 5-petaled, smelling faintly of crushed dreams and old honey. Tonight, there are 2. You touch one, gently, with the back of your knuckle. It trembles slightly, as though recognizing something in you. You stay like that for a while, not thinking, not naming, just existing in the pause between sun and moon. And then, drawn by no reason but rhythm, you begin to walk again, back through the winding heart of Elderlin, where each house breathes with its own sleep-bound soul, and every corner seems to soften just a little more with the deepening dark. You think about tea, about the feel of linen sheets cool against your skin, about the scent of smoke on your fingertips. But more than that, you think about the dream, not as a story, not as a message, but as something still walking beside you, its presence steady, unspoken. You wonder if it ever really left, or if it, too, is simply waiting for night. The village accepts the dusk with the grace of a candle, accepting a match. The light narrows, then deepens, and the hush that follows is not absence. It is readiness, a slow drawing inward, a gathering. The world exhales, and you exhale with it. You return home without hurry, your feet tracing the familiar path worn into the village stone, like the line of a well-read book. Each step feels soft now, not from weariness, but from something quieter, an intimacy with the land beneath you, as though the ground itself is glad you came back. The door greets you the way a story greets its reader, with a familiar creak and the gentle scent of wood, warmed by sunlight and the day's slow dust. The latch fits your palm like memory. You pause a moment before stepping in, your fingers still resting lightly on the doorframe, letting the night settle around your shoulders like a shawl. In Elderlin, entering your home is never just crossing a threshold. It's a returning, a rejoining, a whispered acknowledgement between body and space. I am here again. I have carried the day, and now I set it down. Inside, the hush wraps around you, like steam rising from a bowl of broth. Soft and complete. No sound insists on itself. Even the walls seem to listen. You light a single candle small, honey-colored, its flame flickering, like it remembers what it's meant to protect. The light doesn't banish the dark. It coexists with it, casting gentle curves into the corners, brushing against the folded blanket, the shelf of herbs, the ceramic bowl with a single crack that somehow never spreads. Everything is as it should be: quiet, patient, familiar. You move slowly, not from tiredness, but from intention, the way one might move through a temple or a memory. You set the kettle on the small stove and fill it with cool, clean water, listening to the hollow echo it makes as it accepts the offering. When it begins to hum, it does so softly, like a sigh held in the throat of something old and kind. While you wait, you gather the tea. The leaves are dried lavender and a hint of chamomile, touched with a pinch of crushed fennel seeds, your own mixture, made weeks ago when you felt the dream pulling closer and knew you'd need something gentle to meet it with. The scent rises even before the water touches it. You close your eyes and breathe it in. It smells like rest, like the memory of calm, like someone brushing hair from your forehead before you wake. When the water is ready, you pour it slowly, reverently, over the leaves and watch them curl and bloom. They move like they're remembering water, like they're not quite ready to let go of the shape they once held. You understand. Some parts of you feel the same. You carry the cup with both hands. It's warm and balanced and heavier than it looks. You take it to the window, where your chair waits. The cushion has grown thin over the years, but the shape of your body still fits into it like a final line returning to the melody. Outside, the world has disappeared into twilight. The shapes of the houses have blurred. The trees have become silhouettes of memory. The village no longer asks anything of you. It only holds you, quietly, in its breath. You sip the tea. It's bitter at first, then sweet, then warm, then gone, and again, bitter, sweet, warm, gone. You begin to feel yourself loosening in places that had held quietly all day behind the eyes. In the belly, in the backs of your knees. The tea is doing its work. Or maybe the quiet is. Or maybe they are the same. You don't think of the dream as a destination anymore. You think of it as a room you never truly left. And as you sit there, tea in hand, ace unfocused, the veil between waking and dreaming begins to lift in gentle increments. Not torn, not breached, just softened, like fog rising from warm grass, like breath fogging on a mirror. You set the cup aside and stand, your body moving as though called by something deeper than sleep. The blanket is cool as you unfold it, familiar as a skin. You slip beneath it and let it draw its comfort over your shoulders, over your chest, over your ribs that have carried so much stillness today. The mattress shifts beneath you like it remembers every shape you've taken and welcomes each one back without question. The candle is nearly gone now. Its wick, a curve of glowing breath. You blow gently, and the light disappears with no protest. Darkness takes its place, not with menace, but with welcome. It folds around you like pages closing at the end of a long chapter. You lie still, eyes open to nothing, and breathe. The quiet in the room deepens, becomes a presence, becomes a companion, and soon, the breath that leaves you does not return in quite the same way. It slows, it sinks, and your body softens in turn. You are not falling asleep. You are being received by the dream, by Elderlin, by something beyond either name. And in the hush that follows, you are not alone. The dream is already waiting.